Hello, this is me at Nakhavali, and you're watching and listening to the Middle East Analitika. On this episode, we speak about the political situation in Egypt. I speak with Samar Elhusseiny, Program Officer at Egyptian Human Rights Forum. Samar, thank you very much for joining the program.
Thank you for having me, actually.
While the Arab Spring ultimately resulted in the downfall of numerous regional leaders, including Gaddafi, Ben Ali, and also Mubarak, it didn't cause the fall of authoritarian governments in other countries like Syria. Why did Egypt's leadership collapse in 2011?
Uh, that's a big question, actually. I think part of it is that the Egyptian regime was very fragile and it was getting older and older. I think what part of what helped Bashar al-Assad is that he was young. He has it in him to keep resisting the revolution. Mubarak was old. The regime was old. The system itself has its own complex inside between the old guard and new guard. So there was no consensus when it comes to the inside of the regime itself. I participated in the revolution, so I would like to think that our power was unresistible to the extent that it ended up with collapsing the regime. This is, of course, was a big impact, but I think also that the international regime or the international society, if we can call it, you played a different role in Egypt because they didn't try to intervene like they did in Syria. What they try to do is that to find mediators, to find institutions that they can talk to and help stabilizing the situation in Egypt. Um, I hate to say this, but I think that the international society used to think and is still thinking a way to a certain level that Egypt is too big to fail, and the Egyptian regime is relying on this actually. So they think that they need to put all the efforts so that Egypt would stay as it is. It would be stable. And I think the last impact would be that the key institution in the country, the military institution, didn't want Mubarak anymore. Mubarak was a threat to the whole project of July 52 state. So, right in this moment, in 2011, it was easier to support Mubarak with his son and go with the plan to get Gamal Mubarak after his death, which would have done a civil war in Egypt, or to throw out Mubarak and then move on with the country and keep their own project, which they successfully did.
Right. But today, 12 years after Arab Spring, Egypt remains a deeply divided country with a, let's say, repressive government that is often criticized for its human rights abuses and lack of political freedom. So, in your opinion, what's the legacy of Arab Spring for Egypt?
The legacy in Egypt is huge, I would say. It's huge to the extent that the current president, every single time he is on a speech, he blames the 2011 revolution for whatever mistakes he's doing in the current situation. The legacy is so huge to the extent that the state is still afraid, scared that this will happen again. The legacy is still there because there are thousands behind bar because the state are punishing them for participating in the Arab Spring. Uh, the most important feature of the legacy also it's there in the younger generations. I don't like to act like all generation, but let's be honest, I'm mid 30s now, so there is a younger generation. Uh, the ones who were in high school, maybe even in preparatory school during the revolution, they are now graduated from university, and they're speaking about the revolution with so much proud that, like, I was offended 2 days ago on Twitter because one of them, she was like, I was saying that I was commenting on something related to the grandson of Mubarak was posting a tweet about his grandfather, and I was like, he's his grandfather at the end of the day. And she was like, and she's so young, she's so cute. She's like, no, we can't forgive him because people died, literally. And I'm like, I know, I was there, but I felt so proud that these, like, with all the attempts that the current regime is doing to bury this legacy, it is still there. Another feature is that you can feel how the younger generation are liberated on the social layer and cultural layer, which is more important. And I think that this is the ultimate uh, legacy that everybody would hope for, because this is how you accumulate, how you achieve an actual change. Revolutions usually do, like, it's kind of an earthquake. It's a moment, but then what happens after is the most important thing. If I go on talking about the legacy, this will end the 30 minutes. So these
Right,
are the
right.
key features that I would
Let me
think
ask
about.
you about Mohammad Morsi. Opinion on Morsi's leadership are divided. Supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood and other Islamists see Morsi as a legitimate and democratically elected leader who was removed from power in a military coup. Others, including many seculars and liberals, viewed his government as an authoritarian and intolerant toward opposition groups, and of course welcomed his removal from power. What mistakes do you think Mohammad Morsi made following the election that ultimately led to his overthrow?
Well, I think that Mohammed Morsi was a very good parliament member. That's his capacity as a person. And I cannot blame the mistakes that happened during this 1 year on him. It's way beyond his abilities. I think it was the overall vision of the Muslim Brotherhood group that led actually to this uh, catastrophic moment that we are witnessing right now in Egypt. Because I'm not blaming them for sure for Sisi's mistake, but they contributed. They didn't. The way Mohamed Morsi came to power was through out an alliance with the civic powers. And the first thing that they done once he came to power was actually to like cancel this alliance, which was so irrational. I don't want to call it stupid, but was very irrational because this was our only way to combat the military institution is to keep sticking together as revolutionary powers. This was our only way. But once you come to power and then you start thinking that you own the game, nobody owns the game in politics. Politics is very volatile to the extent that nobody owns it. And the way the Muslim Brotherhood dealt with the constitution amendments, the referendum, the way that they wanted to impose certain reality on people, gave the military institution exactly what they needed to say that, look, if you leave the country in their hands, it would be a new Islamic Iranian Republic, and nobody wants that. I remember I was in Brussels at this time in 2012. I was interning with in the European Parliament, and one of my colleagues was Iranian. And Middle Eastern, we tend to follow each other's news. So he was like, Summer, I think you should stay in Brussels. You shouldn't go back because I can see this is exactly what happened in Iran after the revolution. This was scary for me, of course. It was scary for my family. So the Muslim Brotherhood, although they came throughout assuring other civic powers that we can do it together, we can find the middle ground, we can find the consensus on at least the minimum topics, and we can run it together. What they did once Morsi succeeded was that they made a coup on this coalition, which led at the end of the day, after 1 year, to that the military institution singled them actually out of the game. They took them out and they started to talk directly with civic powers because I was your ally and you throw me at the streets. So I don't have anything but the streets. And then I find the most powerful institution in the country saying that actually we can help you, we can get rid of this imminent threat. And then of course you as a human being you will try to ally with the other institution. I
Right.
don't say that this was constitutional. Of course, Mohammad Morsi was democratically elected. I think his elections was one of the rare, like fair and free elections in Egypt. And you can see that there was an actual like competition in these elections. But democracy is a process. You can't take one element of it, which is election, and then you exclude the others. It's like an overall umbrella. You need to have it all or leave it all. We can't pick cherry from democracy as a system.
Right. Okay. Mohammad Morsi is removed from Egyptian political arena. However, we know that the Muslim Brotherhood continues to maintain a presence in Egypt, though in a more limited capacity. We know that the group has been forced to operate underground and has been weakened by the government's effort to suppress it. Qatar, on the other hand, has been a vocal supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood, providing financial and political support to the group. Given the current situation in Egypt, is there any chance for Muslim Brotherhood to get back to the Egyptian political arena?
Well, the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood are a key political power in Egypt. You cannot eliminate them. And any regime that thinks that they can eliminate any political power that has different ideologies or ideas from them is so stupid. It hurts actually because you can't. They're there. They're actually, although their capacity is a bit limited right now, but if tomorrow there is a free and fair elections, they will have candidates. They will have a very adequate, an adequate representation in the parliament. They might have a very strong presidential candidate. So they are there. They have their own um voters that actually nobody right now is also attracting. Like the civic powers cannot work on the ground, so their capacity are very limited. uh, uh, Most of the political parties here in Egypt are very like burlesque in nature, so they don't have an actual activities that they can discuss, debate, or engage with voters about. The way that the Muslim Brotherhood were operating and still operating on a very limited capacity in Egypt is doesn't have uh, a similar power or political power that is actually providing the people and voters with. So, of course, tomorrow, if there is a free and fair elections, they would be there. And I think this is one of the fears that the current regime has because they're not stupid. They know the game. They know it. They understand that. They know that even inside the military institution itself, there are people like religion is a key aspect in the Egyptian society. although we're not that religious, but we like people who talk about it. So voters, especially from specific social classes, they tend to speak to vote for the people who speak more about God and religion. بتاع ربنا. That's what they call it. This guy is related to God, so he wouldn't be unfair. He wouldn't be. Just speaking about religion gives the voter a lot of assumptions that this person would be good. The military itself, they have inside the military like a lot of religious aspects that actually enhances this nature that we are also بتوع ربنا. We're also uh, not away from God. So I'm sorry that I'm using like the Arabic, but it is important to say it as it is, and I think the audience would understand it after a while. Um, the current regime, when they decided to plan the national dialogue, they excluded the Muslim Brotherhood, although they welcomed the Salafi political parties, which was ironic because they know that Egyptian people, they don't like extremists that much. We're literally like a
Moderate.
we like moderate, yeah, a moderate nation. We don't like radical solutions. We don't like radical ideologies. We like to keep it smooth and easy. So we are not big fan of Salafis, but voters would vote for Muslim Brotherhood because they present the moderate Islamic way that the Egyptian voter would accept. So yeah, if tomorrow there is a space, they would be there in power. I wouldn't say that they would, because again, the Egyptian regime over the last 10 years or maybe 8 years was structurally demolishing their power, but they still has capability to rebuild even. They know it. They're very strong and smart, and they also it's kind of a talent how they organize themselves. This is like the structure of the group, the way it is structured in the Egyptian society. All of this wouldn't die in a minute, or not even in 100 years.
Yeah, but from the other side, we know that also the military power is significant in Egypt. We know that they removed the government, which was
Yeah.
elected in a democratic way, and also they excluded the public from some political questions. So, how far do you think Sisi will go with his military power?
Um, right now, I would actually differentiate between the military institution and Sisi because uh, the military institution is operating as an institution, and you can see this when the revolution happened, that they saw that Mubarak was a threat to the institution, so they helped overthrowing Mubarak. It was fine for them. Right now, the military institution also is differentiating itself from Sisi himself because they feel that he is becoming more and more fragile, and his popularity, which was to the sky in 2012 and 2013 and 14, it's actually retreating. So I think in a minute, although Sisi is trying to give them a lot of privileges, but when the institution would feel threatened by his presence, this would be the moment that the institution itself would overthrow him. They wouldn't mind it. They don't care actually for the names. They have a project. And although this is painful to acknowledge, but the military institution in Egypt is the only institution that is actually operating as an institution. They have a project. They keep it. They don't care for the individuals. They care for the project. We have a state. We have to maintain it. So in a minute, they would overthrow Mubarak. in a minute they would uh, support Sisi to come to power, because and also there is something related to the military institution ego. They don't accept civilians to be presidents over the military institution, which is ironic because the current constitution anyway puts the military institution is in a higher place than the president, than whoever comes in power. Like the military institution is actually the ultimate power in the current constitution. So um, Sisi himself right now he is kind of stuck. He has to retreat his like expansion in economy, even the expansion of the institution itself, because a lot of reports came from World Bank, the IMF. They were requiring certain conditions to keep supporting Egypt. We are in a dire economic crisis, and we need support, of course. And the expansion and intrusion of the military institution in economy uh, is now very significant, that you can see from the sky.
Right.
So all the economic institutions are asking the president and the government to like take some space from the military institution. Even the Gulf allies are asking him to give us more space for foreign investments, for private sector to operate, because right now it is so closed on the military institutions that nobody can move. Even the Gulf money, the Gulf investors, they can't go and invest because there is a lot of restrictions. Unless you are affiliated to the military institutions, you wouldn't be able to invest in Egypt. So, yeah.
Okay, since you mentioned economy and the involvement of military in economy, actually, this is reminding me also the situation in Iran and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps involvement in the Iranian economy. But let me ask you, we know that the military involvement in the economy of Egypt dates back to the era of President Jamal Abdel Nasser in the 50s and 60s, of course. But since then, the military has expanded its presence in the economy with the businesses that operate in a wide range of sectors. What is the role of military in the Egyptian's economy today?
Well, the Egyptian army right now, they are so involved in the Egyptian economy to the extent that they do pasta, they do cookies. Like the military factories, they have certain factories that actually do pasta. They do cookies for the Eid or feast. They manufacture like stoves and fridges. They invest in farming shrimps. So you literally, like, whenever there is a dire moment in the economy in Egypt, the military institution, they do smart move. Uh, Trucks goes out of the military institution, like headquarters or whatever, and it has a lot of food supplies like oil, rice, pasta, and they distribute it to people. So um, this is on the, like, if you can show to the Egyptian people that you can, whatever the situation, whatever the crisis, you can provide them with the fundamental needs, then you have their vote, you have their support. So I remember even like 2 or 3 years ago, there was a small crisis in Alexandria. I think that water was overflowing from the street. Uh, 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 I'll find the word. Uh, like this, the sewage. Okay? Uh, anyway, and they needed the Alexandria governor actually asked the military to intervene and help them solve this situation because the cars was drowning in water, or in sewage water, I think. So, and the military accepted this, and it felt like there are two states are actually communicating. Like there is this very powerful state that can intervene anytime and solve your problem, and they have the tools for it. And there is this very poor state that actually have no resources and have no space for moving. So the current, like, even I think there was a very recent interview with one of the biggest businessmen in Egypt, Samih Sawiris, and he was speaking that he will not invest anymore in Egypt because he doesn't think that the rules are fair for investors. The rules are not fair. He cannot continue, and that the military involvement in economy is becoming more and more um, threatening to the overall health or the sanity of the economy itself. So the military is there in every single aspect of the society in Egypt. Uh, if you want to buy a house, you can find a lot of the projects, actually, like infrastructure and construction projects, are now implemented by the military. Uh, and one of the things that the military institution is using to accumulate also capital so they can help the Egyptian economy when the Egyptian government asks is that we have the compulsory military service in Egypt, obligatory. So all these people, we're not at war. So what will you do with these soldiers? They usually go and work with a very small fees, or I cannot even call it salary because it's not adequate to an actual salary. They work in the military projects. They build, they manufacture whatever in the factories. So uh, this gap between the market price for labor and the price that you pay for the soldiers makes a big uh, profit for the institution, which help them to maintain their power over time, actually.
Right.
And also, when you compare it with one last thing, when you compare it with Gamal Abdel Nasser, no, the involvement during Gamal Abdel Nasser, we can call this like nothing comparing to what's happening right now.
Right, right. But now let's talk about the larger scale of our discussion. Let's talk about the regional powers in the Middle East and the relations with Egypt. We know that although Egypt and Saudi Arabia have had good ties historically, there have occasionally been conflicts over the views, let's say, on Syria and Yemen, and the rivalry, of course, for influence in the Red Sea region. We know that Egypt also doesn't get along with other countries in the region, such as Iran, because of its involvement in the region, Turkey and Qatar, because they support the Muslim Brotherhood, and Israel, of course, because of the conflict with Palestinians. Who, in your opinion, are Egypt's current regional allies and foes, if we can call it this way?
Well, Israel actually. The current regime is in good terms with Israel. They even, like, the Israeli lobbyist in DC, they help the Egyptian government. So they are on good terms. Um, Uh, like Emirates was a good ally for a while, but right now they're not. Because they're asking for some changes, they're asking for some reform so they can continue supporting. And actually, like a few days ago, one of the Egyptian politician, he said something that I think very smart. He said that none of the current Gulf areas has emotional Gulf countries leaders has emotional relation with Egypt, which is I think is a very smart analysis because Egypt relied for a long time on the Gulf support because most of their kings and queens and leaders they actually got their education in Egypt, Cairo University or whatever. So they had this emotional attachment to Egypt. They loved it. They know that actually Egypt, in a certain way, to a certain limit, supported them. So when they go back to their country and they become queens or kings, they have this Arab urge to repay. But the current kings and queens, they got their education in UK, in US, in Switzerland. They don't care about Cairo. They don't care about Egypt. They don't have this emotional attachment. They they know that Egypt's biggest power is the cultural and artistic element. So now they you have a Riyadh festival, which brings all singers and actors from Egypt and around the whole region to Riyadh, and now Riyadh is the new hub. So unfortunately, Egypt is losing its allies. Um, uh, right now, the problem with the current regime, and also I would say something that I really like that we didn't involve in Yemen, we didn't involve in Syria. I don't like it when our soldiers go to foreign countries and fight wars that we has nothing to do with. So this is something that I cannot say that the Egyptian regime did wrong. And on the opposite, I like it. Like I like it very much. So because it was very stupid when Abdel Nasser sent our soldiers to Yemen in the 64. Um, and like unless we can do some diplomatic intervention or even support on a different level, we don't send our boys to fight. So I really like this, but uh, uh, also like limiting Egypt regional rule to the extent that now we are um, sheltering to countries like Emirates or Saudi Arabia to intermediate or mediate between us and Ethiopia, for example, to solve the Renaissance Dam issue. Is something that I would say for Egyptian nationalists are a bit painful because we were the key regional power in the region. And also when you see that Egypt's current allies are Israel or Bashar al-Assad, like which the Egyptian regime is openly saying that they don't mind like normalize the relation with him. It is it's like now it's like um, the gang of losers, and we're hanging out with them. So you're hanging out with Haftar from Libya. You're hanging out with Bashar from Syria. You're hanging out with even in Sudan. You're hanging out with Burhan, which is I wouldn't say Burhan is a loser and Hamiti is a winner, but both of them are like war criminals. So I really don't like us to hang out with either of them. But uh, even the latest attempt from Egypt to mediate between Israel and Gaza in order to do this um, truce. It didn't actually the second day Gaza went back to send missiles to Israel. And unless you have a certain power that you can impose or you can um, uh, reflect on the allies that you are working with, your agreements wouldn't be respected. So unfortunately, right now we are with the gang of losers, if we can summarize this.
Right. Okay, now let's talk about the superpowers relationship with Egypt. Traditionally saying on the Western Bloc, Egypt has been a key ally of the United States in the Middle East, receiving significant military and economic assistance from Washington. On the Eastern Bloc, we know that Egypt has sought to build closer ties with Russia in recent years, as it is becoming one of the Egypt's major arms suppliers. Regarding China, we know that Egypt has sought to deepen its ties with China in recent years as well, particularly through the Belt and Road Initiative. If we agree that we are moving toward a multipolar world order, where is Egypt heading in these equations?
I know. I hope the current regime knows because um, the current regime, I don't know if you, there were several recent reports coming out from US, actually revealing some like classified information about the Egyptian army, or the Egyptian president was actually trying to make arms deal with the Russia to send them missiles to help them in the Russia-Ukraine war. And then the US intervened and stopped this. Um, and they actually bought the missiles themselves and sent it to Ukraine. And after 2 days, you find another report saying that the Egyptian regime allowed actually Russia to go through the Egyptian
Space.
uh,
Yeah.
airspace, yeah, in order to go to Syria, and also in order to move arms, warfare devices. So I think that the current regime, they want to manipulate each side in order to get some gains or interest, which I don't mind. But if you're gonna do it, you need to play it smart, and you need to understand that we're not in the 60s, we're now in the 21st century, and that everything is recorded. You need to know that you are watched, your regime is watched, that the every country would know what you're doing. You're not that smart. You cannot outsmart also institutions and agencies and countries. You need to have a strategy other than, we're not actually, like, if we can call it, the current president is coming from a neighborhood in Cairo that is known for its touristic aspects. And usually you, part of the deal is that you actually, like, you bluff the tourist, and you give them things that are overpriced, or you give them things that are broken. So it's kind of in his genes, if we can call it, that he thinks that he can bluff. And you cannot bluff in international politics. You have to have a strategy. It's not working. And uh, the relation with Russia, I think the Egyptian regime, like like at its core, they prefer Russia over US, because, well, authoritarian regimes, they tend to like each other. And I remember I was following the presidential elections in Russia. It was in the same time with the Egyptian presidential elections in Egypt. And the way the two presidents were acting similar was funny. And the way both of them actually targeted and imprisoned their rivals was very similar to the extent that you think that they're chatting at night over what we will do in this aspect. So they have a lot of similarities. Even their strategy about certain human rights topic, democracy issues are very, very similar. So they like it. They like Russia, and Russia like them. That's very clear. But they know that they cannot maintain their power without the US. They know that being an ally with the US is not an option. It's uh, it's a constitutional issue in Egypt. You have we have this alliance has been ongoing since 73, the war, and Egypt army has an annual reminder of this alliance. And this is actually a substantial reminder, the American aid to the Egyptian army. So you cannot, and the Russian cannot actually replace it. They don't have the resources, as simple as it is. So they need to keep uh, like weighing their options. But what they're saying in public is that they are in alliance with the US. But what they're doing actually is saying that they're more and more into supporting Russia. Um, to be honest, I think that the Egyptian regime till this moment didn't realize the importance of its alliance with China. They didn't even understand how much this can be beneficial when it comes to negotiating on the Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. I don't know why, but maybe this is something stereotypical or racist. I don't know why, but really they are not trying to make use of this good relation with China to improve any element that China can actually help them with. And even the Chinese investments in Egypt, right now they are facing the same challenges that other foreign investors are facing. There is no real competition in the Egyptian economy, so investors cannot sustain investing in Egypt. So we are a Russia team, I think, to conclude.
Samar, thank you very much, and it was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much for watching and listening to us. Please don't forget to subscribe.